Oh, hey, you're up. Oh, hey, you're up.
Hit that flying pajama or what?
Oh, hey, you're up.
You're
Oh,
gonna
hey,
die.
you're up.
Again
Hit that flying pajama or
again.
what?
Oh, hey,
and
you're up.
again.
Oh, hey, you're up.
Hit that flying pajama or what?
Oh, hey, you're up. Oh, hey, you're up.
Who's Bill Murray?
Oh, hey, you're up. Not sure if you remember my name or not. You were pretty wasted last night. I'm Bubbawheat, and you're listening to my podcast, It's Time to Rewind, where we're in the death days of autumn covering the Happy Death Day movies one loop at a time. Today, we're discussing Tree's fifth loop in Happy Death Day to You that starts at 48 minutes, with Tree ripping out a piece of paper from her notebook and eating it, and ends at 48 minutes and 34 seconds, with Tree falling off the clock tower transitioning into falling into Carter's bed. And joining me for the fourth and the final time this season is my guest, Brandy, aka the Terrific Lady. How are you doing today?
I am doing well, but sad since this is my fourth and final time talking about a really good montage.
Yeah, it's like I said at the start, it's these montages are always a lot of fun. And I think, we covered a lot of ground and we have a little bit more to go to finish this off. And it's another short one. This one is only 34 seconds, but once again, I think there's a fair amount to cover here.
Yeah, a little bit longer than the last one with her tossing herself in the wood chipper, so we got about 20 more seconds added onto this one.
Yeah, and also one thing that I didn't mention last week and is also true this week is in both of these loops we don't get Tree waking up in Carter's bed. We cut right to her in the lab.
Yeah. Yeah, because usually it starts off with always with her waking in his bed.
Mhm.
And those two didn't. Huh.
Yeah,
It's
and
definitely maybe just an editing choice to just like I
yeah,
guess break it up because if she was
shorthand.
always yeah, if she was always like waking up to the bed, be like, okay, we get it, she's waking up in a bed.
Yeah, and this time we're kind of focused more on the Sisyphus, the Sisyphus device. Her here in the background, and kind of like I mentioned last week, we got or 2 weeks ago, I believe it was. We got the brief shot of her wearing the gray sweater, and here we get the actual scene where she's wearing the gray sweater in the lab, and we have Dre in the background tossing a Nerf football to herself.
Yeah, and then she just totally Tree eating a piece of paper cubs from trees. It's a little bit of like a weird like kind of thing I noticed, but yeah, I also just got the sense that she was just at the point it's like, okay, just let me just eat and absorb all this information and let me just call it good because my brain is tired of science and equations.
Yeah, and I also think it's they don't touch on it too much, but with each loop, she actually has to memorize more and more because she has to memorize every failed equation. And so the longer it goes, the more equations she has to memorize. It's kind of like Simon, where the first couple rounds are easy, where you just have to remember the first two buttons, and then we were getting into round 5 and 6 and 7 as we go later on into the movie, where she has to memorize more and more of these equations. They don't really focus on it, but I can't imagine. I would imagine that it becomes more and more difficult the more iterations they go through because there's that much more that she has to memorize.
Yeah, I do appreciate that they had her the record keeping and the equations and working on the algorithms as the central point, connecting point that they always kept coming back to
Mhm.
during this montage. So it gave us some kind of other anchor to hang on to other than just her waking up in a bed all the time.
Yeah, and I also really like the detail that whenever we get to the shot of her at the top of this clock tower, we actually you can see that her notebook beside her at she sets it down on the railing. So that kind of implies that she is like carrying that notebook with her everywhere. And we do also see it like whenever she's in her jealous moment with watching Danielle and Carter, she has the notebook there with her. So it's like she's carrying this around just to help her memorize it. So I imagine that she keeps going back and back to it throughout the day in order to help her memorize all these equations.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to, especially if you're living on borrowed time for the most part. Just like every waking minute and second that you have, it's just like you just be shoving a bunch of quadratic calculus equations in your brain.
Mhm. And we get this, moment. We get her wearing the FML sweatshirt again, and that we saw her whenever she was spying on Lori and Gregory. And we get this moment where she kind of pulls it down, kind of pointing to Ryan. It's like, yeah, this is what it says on my shirt here. F my life.
Yeah, that was such a fun little moment, and again, her facial expression just sold it. It's like we could really. It's almost like we were going along with her for the ride. Just be like, you know what? We're just as frustrated by this entire situation as you are. We hope that it could get resolved, or you could get out of it.
Yeah, and one fun little fact that I noticed, like I was looking this movie up on IMDb, and in one of the shots they have that moment in like the promo shots, but in that shot on IMDb, her shirt says OMG instead of FML. So I imagine like in some promo materials or maybe it's something that they did in, possible preparation for, like, a TV edit, they kind of, PG'd it down.
Yeah, I like FML better than OMG, because
Mhm.
OMG just kind of implies shock at the whole situation, and by this point, she's way past shock. It's almost just like second nature to her. So it's just like, okay, well, this may just end up being my entire life. F my life. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, I also think that FML works much better than OMG in terms of the movie as a whole. And then, we get to this clock tower moment, and this is kind of the return of the clock tower. And I didn't talk about it whenever I was talking about the first movie, but they did shoot the college scenes of this movie in Loyola University in New Orleans, and this tower this tower with the building, it exists, but there is no clock on it. So the clock is something that they added specifically for the movie.
Oh,
And like the reason that I kind of looked it up is looking at the clock face in this 30 seconds, not having as much to talk about, but I noticed that the Roman numerals, because it has like the Roman numerals on the clock face, but for the 4, and I don't think that it's not super uncommon. I think there are a fair number of clocks that do this, but the 4 is 4 eyes and not IV.
yeah. I think it would just be more convenient just to do IV. I don't know, like why they chose to go
Yeah.
I.
Yeah, I didn't I didn't look it
Yeah,
up
I.
to see why some clocks do that. It's I'm definitely sure that it's just an aesthetic choice. I think
Mhm.
some people think that the 4 eyes look better than IV, but, they still have the IX for 9 and instead of the VIII, which I think that V with 4 eyes, it would just be too unwieldy, but 4 eyes is small enough that it still kind of fits with the others, and it just makes things a little bit cleaner or simpler for people that don't necessarily know Roman numerals, I guess? I don't
Eh,
know.
yeah, well, like, yeah, that's probably the main reason why they did it. But see, people learning about Roman numerals in elementary school serves It's purpose, because then you can talk about it on podcasts about movies.
Yeah, and then we get this jump off of the clock tower, which is it's another mirror to the first movie. Where in the first movie she jumps off with the noose around her neck, and this one she just jumps off. And also it's another mirror. It's kind of a double mirror, kind of like the wood chipper was like a double movie reference. This is a double mirror to the first movie because we get her jumping off the top of the clock tower, and then we also have the scene transition into the bed. Like we in the first movie, we got that with the baseball bat to the head, which I think both of those transitions I think look fantastic. I think this one. I think between the two, I like the baseball bat a little bit better, but I think this one is good as well.
Yeah, 'cause it has a resigned almost feeling to it,
Mm,
because also the look on her face as she transitions, and it's almost just like, I have to go through this again. So it was very just kind of, it wasn't, the transition wasn't sudden, even though to some it may seem like sudden. It's because of the little fade out, almost kind of watercolory, like kind of
mm.
fade out thing that happened around her as she was falling like down, like with her arms out back on the bed. So
Yeah, and I also believe that, I was looking at this closely. I believe that they filmed this backwards. I think that it was done mostly practically. I think that the her laying on the bed, I the way I didn't like look up the behind the scenes, but I just the way that her hair ends up falling onto the pillow at the end, makes me feel like it was shot in reverse, and there's, like, she's laying on a platform attached to some sort of crane that's, like, lifting her up out of bed, and then there's the wind machine, the fan blowing her hair, and then the clock tower background is added digitally, and then they digitally, animate that away into the bedroom as they're playing it as they're filming it in reverse. So I think that she's being lifted out of bed.
yeah, yeah, I think that's a good example of practical mixed with digital that's done right, because as we mentioned in the one of the earlier loops where she's fallen out of the plane in her bikini, and it looks like it was not superimposed very well into
Mhm.
the background that she was in. Here it just all seemed very seamless, and there was nothing that I could point to where it's like, aha, that looks fake.
I mean, I do think, looking at it super closely, you can tell that the clock tower, background was added digitally, but it's dark enough that it, the seams are not as apparent.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, they're there, but they're not nearly as big as in the skydiving one.
Ah, yeah, yeah. And
Like
also for Back to the Future fans, like Clock
yeah.
Tower in the first movie, Clock Tower in this movie as well.
And I also think that this is another homage to Groundhog Day, because Bill Murray does have
Yes.
the he does a very similar fall off of the um, I forget, but a tower. It's not a clock tower, but there is a ledge in the tower in the middle of town. I think it's like the town square or the town hall, maybe. But he also does the T pose, and she is doing the T pose again. She's falling exactly the same way that she fell out of the plane. Only this time we're seeing it from the other angle, because in the plane she was facing camera and falling backwards away from camera. This time she's facing the clock tower, or the clock face from the inside, but she's facing away from the camera and then falling backwards towards the camera. But in
Yeah.
Groundhog Day, Bill Murray also did the similar T pose, but he jumped off forwards.
Yeah, yeah. Like I'd always not always, but when I first saw these two movies, Happy Death Day and Happy Death Day to You, I immediately, my mind just went to also Groundhog Day. This is pretty much
Mhm.
just a modernized, updated version of Groundhog Day. And I really love Groundhog Day. It's one of my favorite, like, I consider it a horror movie because with the situation that he was in. But yeah, it's like, I think that's why I dug like these two movies like as well. Like, Death Day and then its sequel.
Yeah, and I also like the dreamlike quality of this transition, and I think, going back to what I was talking about, how I pretty sure that they filmed this in reverse. I think that helps add to it, and also, like, the kind of cloudy way that the clock tower background fades away. I think and they also add, like, a little kinda dreamlike sound effect too over the top of the montage music, the Paramore song. I think that
Yeah.
that all adds to the kinda dreamlike quality of this transition.
Yeah, I thought it was a really beautiful transition with its simplicity. I mean, because there's
Mhm.
not a lot to it, but it just seamlessly blends the falling from the tower and the falling into the bed.
Yeah, and then one other little detail that I noticed that I love that they have that there, it's something that they thought about, but in this overhead shot, you can see Tree's phone on the nightstand next to the bed.
I didn't catch that.
Yeah, you can
Yeah,
see
because
her little pink her rose gold iPhone,
yeah,
right there on the
yeah,
nightstand.
yeah, because she's always answering it like every time she
Mhm.
wakes up with that like real like that ringtone that happens like every time that it's your birthday.
Yeah, yeah. And then that's the end of this loop, and that's the end of, your tenure here on this season. Do you have anything else that you wanted to say about this loop specifically, or about, the movies as a whole?
Um, I think that the movie as a whole, I do enjoy it. I prefer the first one a little bit more than this
Mhm.
one, but I think for anybody who is curious about checking this movie and then the Happy Death Day out and you like Groundhog Day-esque vibes, I'd say definitely give both of these a shot. They're a lot of fun.
Yeah, I agree. My opinion of the second movie has diminished a little bit as I'm kind of, digging into it so deeply. I'm kind of finding a bit more holes than I did in the first movie, but I do still think that they're both a lot of fun. I know that some people, don't like the switch to, much more comedy and sci-fi and much less humor in the sequel, but I still think that the sequel is a lot of fun. And then, before I let you go, one thing that I have been asking everybody this entire season, because, this does take place, you know, most of the 2 movies take place on Tree's birthday. I've been asking people, do you have any birthday traditions yourself?
Yes, I always get my favorite meal fixed like by my mom. So I like to spend a lot of my birthdays with family. So she fixes my favorite meal. I get to choose the dessert that she makes. And if there's a good movie out in theaters on my birthday, I mean, my birthday's in June. So June's usually just kind of a blah month for movies at times. But if there's a good movie in theaters, we go see a movie, and regardless if there's a movie in theaters or not, it usually ends with us playing a lot of board games. So we've always been a big board game, card game family. So yeah, those are my birthday traditions. Just very now as I get older, now I'm in my 40s, but as I get older, it's just like I just love more chill birthdays. So that's what I like.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Alright, well, again, thank you so much for joining me these past 4 weeks. It's been a lot of fun, and, for the last time, why don't you take a moment and let people know about your other projects and where you can be found online?
Yes, so I am the Terrific Lady on Instagram and Threads, and the Terrific Lady on YouTube, and I run Retro Horror School, which is where I do analyses and deep dives and dissections of horror movies from the eras of the 1970s through the 2010s. So if you like going into deep dives on horror movies and you just like learning about horror, then I may be up your alley. So come check me out.
Right. And as always, I am Bubbawheat, and you can find me on social media everywhere where I'm at Bubbawheat. Best place to look for me to see what I'm doing these days is on Threads. I also have a Facebook group. It's Time to Rewind, a time loop group. You can join that to discuss episodes as they come out or have any sort of discussions about anything time loop related. It's all welcome there. And until next time.